Is a little different on this. I mean, you guys are absolutely right. So the thing is, when you're building layer one technologies, so what is a layer one? We need to understand, right? You talked about the Web 2. What was Web 2? Web 2 was all about the cloud, and I've done that journey. Like 17 years in the game, I went from enterprise software to the cloud, and all hell broke loose. Everyone is talking about there's no way we're not going to put our data in this thing called the cloud. It's not going to exist. Larry Ellison is on the record saying the cloud is going to die. And then 10 years later, he wanted to be the number one company in the cloud game, right? That's Oracle. So we all know how that happened. Salesforce basically launched cloud into upper echelon. And then everyone was starting to develop applications for the cloud. So they had to pivot their skill set going from C++ to Python and other. They started learning new languages and so forth. So with respect to my colleagues over here, same thing happened in layer one. So what is the blockchain? Layer one is an equivalent of what basically the cloud is, right? So that's Web 3. So layer one would be Ethereum, Near Protocol, my former employer, Solana, Dfinity, Cosmos. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's so many amazing layer ones. Now, for layer one, you need a very specific type of developer who knows and understands the infrastructure, the architecture that you're building on. And these things are called dApps. So put a D in front of the apps, they're dApps. So now you need to attract a certain type of talent, that young talent or maybe an older talent who wants to build a dApp, right? That's a decentralized app. Languages might be, let's say, Rust. Rust is very popular, especially where I'm from, back in the Silicon Valley. Some developers are getting paid up to $800 an hour. $900 an hour. I've seen that. So they're very good developers. There's very few people, but that's how much money that they're making, whether vis-a-vis they be independent contractors or full-time employees or whatnot. So the skill set is much more higher. So that's how you actually attract more talent. You're like, hey, you as a developer can make up to $800 an hour as an independent contractor, and you can work with multiple projects. So why would you not take on that opportunity? So for me, selfishly, I would be like, okay, let me go and learn this language and try to build on layer one. And it's just not specific layer one, like, oh, I select Solana, for example. Now there's multi-chain, right? So you can go and you can basically build multi-chain cross platforms and so forth. And that's what's basically happening in Web 2 as well. Like people are becoming agnostic of the chain. They don't just want to build on AWS, for example, because the cost is so high. And they want to spread across their costs. So that's one way of attracting new talent and a barrier to entry. Understand what the layer one protocol might be, then what layer two is, and languages, and then dApps and so forth. That, to me, is much more attractive way to basically attract a talent. And that's what people are doing. They're going on, taking different courses on Udemy, and all these different other places. They're getting certified. That's really awesome for them. So that's one way of doing it.
No, thanks a lot. It's really, really interesting. So we talk about people from diverse background, right, who wants to get into the industry. And you talk about, all the technical part, which is really, really hard for people that are non-tech. How would you get them? What would be your kind? Because I'm thinking for women, for example, which the industry is really, really non-diverse, and it makes people to be a little bit fragile because it's a totally new industry. Some women be really, really interested to get into that industry. How could you onboard them to being the next generation of Web3? What would be your advice?
Should I go first? Okay, so we'll go in this order. So I've been an executive over a decade, and I make sure that I'm definitely big on diversity, and I want to have 50-50 at least minimum ratio in my teams, female and men. And the issue is, yes, female developers are very hard to find. They're not just many. So that's part of the problem, but you have to work with your people team to actually go find this talent, and you have to make sure. So we do get into this, that you don't want to get into a bias when you're hiring, like, oh, let me hire her because she's a female, right? Or certain pronoun, they or them. You definitely don't want to do that. You want to hire the best talent. But I think the responsibility comes to the people team, the HR department, that they actually go find these amazing talents. And there are a lot of great recruiting companies. They're out there. I've been talking to a few who have access to this talent. So it falls upon you. It's incumbent upon you, like myself, to actually go and make the effort and go hire that. There's a term here. It's called crypto bros. There's a lot of crypto bros. You'll see a lot of men over here. So you definitely don't want to be hiring like crypto bros in your company, and you become that company where 99% or 95% of the folks are just men. It's not okay. So you definitely need diversity in all walks of life of people as well, and even like different ethnic backgrounds, just not genders. So I think recruiters are your best friend when it comes to this point. You yourself is your best friend. You have to make that decision when you sit in the room and say, you know what, I'm not going to go hire beyond. So let me see what my ratio is. If my ratio is 50% already filled with men, I'm not going to go hire more men. So I think that's one way of doing it. That's how I dealt it. So worked pretty good so far.
Yeah, completely right. That's why awareness has to start at the early beginning of the